Do you want me to keep the chat and the comments on YouTube?
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, you got it. Okay, we're streaming. Do you want me to keep the chat and the comments on YouTube?
Oh, so it's running behind, isn't it?
Yeah, just a little bit, but we're good to go.
Whew. So for folks who've just joined us, we will be starting promptly at 5:30. And so we're just waiting for that time to come up. But we're also encouraging folks to get onto YouTube, which is streaming live right now. So as soon as we hit 5:30, we are good to go. And thanks for those folks that did join us. Appreciate it. And I hope that you can see the slide that we've got up. Hi, everyone. It's Rosemary Romero. We're not starting yet. I'm just welcoming folks to the meeting. We thought we'd start right on time. My experience from doing these kind of meetings are folks get on a little bit earlier, and it helps to get started on time. Just the dinner hour also. It's cold outside, but we will get started promptly. So appreciate everyone who's joined us so far. All right. So Joe, are we ready to go?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty, thank you so much. We're going to start on time. Mark, I assume folks will be calling in as well. Let me close this. So I'd like to welcome everyone to this public forum My name is Rosemary Romero. I am a mediator, facilitator, used to be counselor. That was way back when. And I'm honored to be facilitating this evening with Joe Abeta, who you cannot see, but Joe is the man behind the screen here who has just done magic for all of us. So really appreciate all of his hard work pulling this together. This has been a while in coming, but we are delighted that it's finally here. Joe, if you could go to the next screen, please. So the purpose of this evening is to seek public perspectives on how the museum might better engage the community, especially where issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion are concerned. The second purpose is to seek input as to how the museum can better express its commitment through exhibitions and programs to explore ethnicity, gender, nationality, race, sexuality, and other forms of cultural difference. And during these times that are very volatile, this is a good time to look introspectively. And in order to look introspectively, the public definitely has to weigh in on some of these ideas. So these are the two main purposes this evening that we'll be hoping to get some information from you. And Joe, the next slide, please. I'm going to walk us quickly through the agenda. I'm going to jump us to, there's a couple of things that we're going to talk about on how the meeting will be run. But at some point, about around 5:40, after Deborah has joined us through a video, Mark White is with me on the screen. And I'll introduce Mark. But later on, I'm really, really thrilled. Joe did a fantastic job with these two videos that we've got with Jen Pack and Harmony Hammond. So we'll have some time for those. They're short videos, but I think we'll give you a perspective about what the museum has been doing, highlighting these two artists. And then we open the meeting up to public comment, and that'll take us pretty close to 7 o'clock. And then Mark, I'll turn it back to you for some of the next steps. So just to remind folks, you can raise your hand. Let's go to the meeting manners, Joe, and I'll walk us through that one. Reminder that this is on YouTube, and it's being videotaped. It's being taped on YouTube, and then I'll have access to this when it's over. So thank you for that, Joe, and we'll come back to that. So how I'm going to run the meeting is asking folks to speak respectfully. Your comments should be relevant to the purpose of the meeting. There's the two purposes that I showed you earlier of what input we're trying to get. You've got, please raise your blue hand if you wish to speak. That'll help put people into the queue. And just as a reminder, Joe will be allowing people to speak. So he'll queue folks up. He'll go to who's ever next, and he'll allow you into the room to speak. I'll time you for 2 minutes. And I just recall when I was on council, I used to think 2 minutes wasn't enough time, but really it is enough time. And we want to make sure that we've got, maybe it isn't enough time, but we want to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity to speak, especially because I've already got 40 participants on the call. So we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to speak. So I call that sharing the airtime. If there's any reason you have other ideas that somebody has not expressed, or that you think of something afterwards, please send your email to me, romero.rosemary@gmail.com. I'm synthesizing all of the comments in a report back to Mark. So it will be helpful for you to send any additional information to me directly. Joe, did I forget anything?
No, ma'am.
All righty, so let's go I'm going to introduce Deborah. Deborah, there we go. I'd like to introduce Deborah Garcia-Griego, excuse me, Deborah, I didn't mean that at all. In fact, I really appreciated working with Deborah's father a long, long time ago. So appreciate your work with the Department of Cultural Affairs. Joe did a videotape of Deborah. We're going to play that short video now.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this important first step conversation. I want to thank Executive Director Mark White for his leadership in recognizing the need for this conversation, and Rosemary Romero for facilitating it. The New Mexico Department of Cultural Affairs is the broadest state cultural agency in the country. We operate the largest state-run museum system. Through this, we are able to offer programs and services across the state, from Las Cruces to Ucalde and Gallup to Clovis. At the department, we view culture holistically, honoring not just the tangible expressions of the visual arts, architecture, and more, but equally our intangible cultural heritage and traditions. The mission of the department is to build a more vibrant, resilient New Mexico. And we do this by improving the quality of life, supporting culturally rich education, strengthening the creative economy, fostering a diversity of cultural expressions, and preserving our cultural resources. At the highest level, the state of New Mexico is committed to racial justice as part of its work, giving voice to the voiceless, leading a dialogue about justice and structural reform, and restoring educational outcomes for communities of color and disadvantaged populations. The Governor's Advisory Council for Racial Justice was established this year. It monitors state agencies, holding them accountable for ending institutional racism and ensuring that all persons receive fair and equal treatment and opportunities. At the Department of Cultural Affairs, we deliver services across 33 counties, reaching a large and diverse audience with education and learning. We are committed to representing broadly the diversity of history and culture within our state and serving a multicultural public. Museums are spaces where communities come together to promote dialogue and to grow in basic understanding about our cultural differences. The Museum of Art is holding this town hall as evidence of its commitment to our shared values. I look forward to positive outcomes informed by this session as they will impact future initiatives, both at the department and at the museum. Once again, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for that. I'm going to keep us moving quickly just because the numbers of folks that are participating, I want to make sure we get to a chance to hear from folks. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mark White, Executive Director of the New Mexico Museum of Arts. It's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure working with you, Mark, on this project.
Thank you, Rosemary. I can only say the same. It's been fantastic to work with you and with Joe on this project. It's been a pleasure since we began a couple of months ago, putting everything together, and the conversations have been truly helpful to me. So thank you to both of you for all of your hard work. So, as many of you know, I am relatively new to the museum, having been here roughly 7 months. And in light of some of the issues that have occurred this year, it really made sense for the museum to begin a period of self-reflection and to think about its commitment to diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. One of the first steps that we took as a museum was to create a committee devoted to the exploration of these issues and how they relate to our current practices in the museum. So the goal of our Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion Committee is to recommend for future initiatives to foster these values in every aspect of museum functions. The first step of that committee was to create a DEAI statement. And that's what you see here on the screen. And just for the sake of clarity, I'm going to read that. In recognition of our unique multicultural community, the New Mexico Museum of Art will work to foster diversity, equity, and social knowledge. The Museum of Art will honor a multitude of cultures, places, and identities through exhibitions, collections, programming, and outreach representing multiple narratives and appealing to a diverse audience. We will cultivate a collective dialogue on social issues and intersecting histories. We understand that we must start this process by educating ourselves and will validate our commitments through our actions. We believe art is for everyone. That is a statement that we have drafted. We are going to be submitting it for approval through our administrative bodies, but we are very happy with the way this came out. And I really want to congratulate our DEAI committee on drafting such an eloquent and comprehensive statement. What I'd like to do now is talk about how we had started to apply these values even before we finished drafting that statement to many of our upcoming projects. In 2021, we'll see a number of projects at the museum that help to express our commitment to these values. The first example will be the exhibition Breathtaking, which is scheduled to open on February 13th and will be on view through July of 2021. At least that's the schedule at present. Now, as you can tell, the title Breathtaking is an interesting and quite topical one. The exhibition will focus on the act and significance of breath in its biological, philosophical, and spiritual ramifications. But more pointedly, Breathtaking will invite viewers to ponder breath as they encounter work about the current pandemic, racial and social justice issues, and the reciprocal relationship between humans and plants, among other topics. So in many ways, this exhibit will be, I think, a very topical way of examining the importance of a simple biological act that most of us take for granted, but has proven in 2020 to have enormous significance in a variety of ways. So we're looking forward to Breathtaking. In August, the museum will also open the exhibition Poetic Justice, which opens on the formal and thematic intersections of 3 artists, Judy Baca, Mildred Howard, and John Quick-to-See Smith, whom many of you will probably recognize as a New Mexico resident. I should also mention that John Quick-to-See Smith is Salish of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Nation. For decades, these 3 artists have been producing complex works of beauty that evoke memory, history, and emotion as they comment upon real-world issues. Their art draws attention to non-dominant viewpoints around community issues like land use, the environment, housing, civil rights, police brutality, and immigration policy. Poetic Justice is designed to explore the careers of these 3 artists, both their commitment to their artistic practice and their passion for social justice and cultural equity. The exhibition will be accompanied by a symposium currently scheduled for October of 2021 that will feature these 3 artists. And I should mention, we are working very closely with all 3 artists on the content of this exhibition, and we are greatly looking forward to welcoming them to Santa Fe in 2021. And finally, as a way of introducing the next part of the program, but also talking about what the museum has done thus far, I want to draw attention to our Alcoves 2020 series, the 4th installment of which will open in 2021. The Alcoves exhibits provide an eclectic cross-section of work by 5 contemporary New Mexican artists. The next exhibition will include the work of Karsten Creighton, J.C. Gonzo, Phyllis Ideal, and Don Woodman. The Alcove series has allowed the museum to truly explore the diversity of art production in New Mexico. To that end, I'd like to introduce a video with the artist Jen Pack, who is in Alcoves 2020 #2. We asked Jen to reflect on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusivity in her own work and how it manifested in her representation in the Alcoves exhibition.
So with that, we'll start the first video.
I'd say I'm an artist of blended culture and hybrid traits. Specifically, I'm Korean Caucasian, as well as I would say masculine and feminine, and I straddle the imaginary line between craft and art. I'm also a loud introvert, and I have rural roots as well as urban qualities. And I've been told many times that I'm ambiguous or hard to place or qualify. This seems to create an interesting space for me in which I'm simultaneously kind of blend in and stick out at the same time. It also means I'm uncomfortable most of the time. I actually have become really comfortable being uncomfortable and sitting in discomfort. Although, to be honest, this hasn't always been the case. It's taken many years and decades really to become more comfortable being seen and being frank about these things. In the long run, I found it to be much more uncomfortable, I should say, and actually can be sometimes quite painful to hide and allow people to project like a false mirroring onto me. And the way this informs my work is that my work is a space of integration. I'm always working to integrate and to kind of mend and seam together disparities that I can't seem to unsee. And it's probably a reaction from being in discomfort. I try to create space for and, not either or. My work is a space where I have worked the most to allow myself to be seen, because I can't erase myself from the work. So I see and I'm exploring kind of a broad spectrum with many in-between colors. And this is the way I'm, you know, being an in-between person really informs my work. It's a continual investigation of the in-between and kind of an integration. And what I really truly hope for is alchemy, creating something new and incentive, you know, from kind of a mushy and exploratory space. This is what I mean by not being able to erase myself from the work. The Alcoves exhibition included works that are reflections of me, meaning my tenuous bicultural background, my kind of fluttering between masculine and feminine, and even in my sort of occupation of urban aesthetics and hard edges, but also rural or even kind of pastoral landscape references in my work. And I used to fantasize about being able to disappear and letting the work exist in a vacuum. And I found that to be a silly fantasy. I think it's from knowing just how incredibly vulnerable the work makes me. It's because it's so exposing. I mean, it's literally transparent, and I would say is a window into my soul exploration. And this used to really alarm me, even though I couldn't stop the compulsion to make it. It's just a space of real vulnerability. But now I'm embracing that vulnerability, and it really continues to transform and center me in kind of a grounding space that I think of as like a powerful softness. And the truth is we're kind of all vulnerable, and the masking that we do to reduce that vulnerability and like hiding in a hierarchy is really a false sense of safety. I'm finding that vulnerability is really quite powerful, and it can be just incredible and even luminous. And the site-specific installation that was included in Alcoves, that was a direct expression of that vulnerability and the power that's inherent in softness, materially and otherwise, and what can transpire if we allow ourselves to sing what I call our true color song. That piece really turned out to be an expression of identity in so many ways. I ran into some real technical issues during the installation, and it became like this embrace of ambiguity and working a way out of problem solving through integrating and seeing and trusting both of myself, but also of others on staff and volunteers. And I was so grateful the museum gave me that opportunity to install it, and really took a chance on what could have been a potential failure. I'm being more openly vocal with long-held private conversations around inequity. And I've actually engaged with DI issues for quite some time in my personal life and also my work life. In my day job, I'm a librarian. And also just through my own self-education into some of the kind of uglier aspects of American history and the way it shapes us today. You know, I mean, I really try and keep up on podcasts and reading. There's just so much incredible stuff being written right now in the turmoil we're in, and it's kind of an exciting time, actually. I find conversations like this one to be really important, and I'm trying to be more generous in disclosing my own experiences and the way it's informed my work and my life as a person of color, as a woman, as someone who's kind of hybrid and ambiguous, and actually just be more persistent in asking to be held in a space that doesn't require my identities to be kind of like cut off or edited. I'm also really trying to make space for others to tell their stories, because this is where I feel like telling each other's our collective stories can help us stop causing each other pain. And I've had this idea percolating for a while that involves storytelling and narrative interviews with what I think of as fellow truth seekers, people that are trying to restore harmony in the way they engage with their chosen art or craft. And I'm thinking this would probably most likely be in the form of a blog. And saying this out loud will help me to motivate actually to do it and get it started. and then more concretely, some things have folded together this year that have allowed me to begin doing something I've long wanted to do, which is donate a portion of all my art sales and right now that's going to equity organizations. So basically what I mean by that specifically is this is the year my student debt went away. And it's huge. I don't know adult life without it. And so I've been really waiting to get out from under that burden and do some investing both in myself and in the larger social fabric. And that's kind of finally arrived. So, and I am also exploring ways to create limited edition multiples, with a portion of the proceeds going to equity organizations and movements. So that's a work in progress, but something I'm working on with a gallery that represents me. And hopefully more ideas will come.
I want to thank Jen for the generosity that she, in sharing her story and in being part of this process. She has been a pleasure for us to work with at the museum, not just on this project, but others. And so it was really fantastic of her to give of her time. We asked the same questions of artist Harmony Hammond, who some of you may recognize. Harmony is also a resident of New Mexico and has been affiliated with the New Mexico Museum of Art for several years. So we asked her the same questions. I do want to say that because of some connectivity issues, you may see some interruptions in her video, but I think you'll be able to get the gist of what she's saying.
I guess I want to say first that I've been trained as a painter, so whatever work I do in whatever media, my approach is primarily that as a painter. So I moved to New Mexico in 1984, and over the years, my work has been included in numerous exhibitions at the museum. Most recently, an exhibition titled Be With Me, a small exhibition of large paintings, which was a 3-person exhibition curated by Mary Scully in 2016. It exhibited paintings by myself, John Zurier, a Bay Area artist, and Nick Aguayo from Los Angeles. I've also had 2 alcove shows at the museum, the first back in 1988, and then more recently, in 2012. And I must say I'm lucky to have work in a permanent collection of the museum as well. So while exhibiting at the museum in any context is always a privilege, I want to talk about the alcove shows, the 2. Well, like I said, I've been in 2 shows, but I'd like to talk about the alcove shows in general, because I think they play a very important role in our arts community. As most of us know, there are very few opportunities for artists in New Mexico to exhibit their work, especially if that work isn't commercial. I'm going to talk about the alcove shows a little bit because I do think, like I said, they're very important to our arts community because there are so few opportunities for our New Mexican artists to exhibit. And that's exactly what the alcove shows do. They present work by recent work, in fact, by artists currently living in New Mexico. These shows have a history with the museum. They've been around for a long time in one form or another. And let me say, for those who don't know, the way they are currently structured, 5 small 1-person exhibitions open simultaneously in 5 3-sided alcove spaces that share a common open area on their 4th side. These alcoves provide a space for an artist to present multiple works if they choose, or they can do an installation. So whether it's multiple works or an installation, in essence, it's a mini solo exhibition that they get to have. At the same time, they benefit from the energy that surrounds a group exhibition. So it's kind of a solo show and a group exhibition with the best of each, I think. Because each artist in a group show has their own circle of family, friends, and supporters, a group show always ensures a very wide audience. And this wide audience is good for the artists who are having these mini solo exhibitions. And of course, it's good for the museum because it brings in such a wide range of people from around the state to see the work by these artists. Since 2012, when curator Mary Scully reinitiated them, the Alcove exhibitions have showcased work by an impressive, culturally diverse group of artists, ranging in gender identification, age, race, ethnicity, and geography. Artists with varied artistic practices and in different stages of their careers. I always like these shows because there's work by artists I know and artists I don't know. The work is always fresh and fantastic, a reflection of current cultural production in New Mexico that feels like it's both for locals and as well as out-of-state visitors. So, Joe, as the museum expands into 2 locations, the Historic Museum on the Plaza and then the new Bladum Contemporary on Guadalupe Street, it's my hope that the museum is able to continue and expand upon these Alcove exhibitions, because I think they are, they're really one of the only ongoing series of exhibitions that showcase work by contemporary New Mexican artists.
And we want to thank Harmony for generously giving of her time as well. Both she and Jen are obviously very busy as artists, and it was really fantastic that they were able to give of their time for this town hall. So thank you, Harmony.
Great, thank you, Mark. Mark, do you want to say a little bit about Will? We had hoped to get one more artist in and didn't quite work out, but if we had time, we may show some slides.
Sure, I'd be happy to do so. We had approached Will Wilson with a request to be part of this town hall, and although he agreed initially, scheduling issues prevented him from taking part. Will is a Dene photographer who spent his formative years living in the Navajo Nation. His work will be featured in the upcoming exhibition, Breathtaking, but the New Mexico Museum of Art was also the site of origin for, in 2012, for his Critical Indigenous Photographic Exchange project, the images of which you just saw on the screen. The CIPEX project, as it's known by its acronym, challenges the documentary mission of photographer Edward Sheriff Curtis from the standpoint of what Will calls, quote, a 21st century Indigenous trans-customary cultural practitioner. I want to supplant Curtis's settler gaze and the remarkable body of ethnographic material he compiled with a contemporary vision of Native North America, unquote. We were very happy for Will to choose the New Mexico Museum of Art as the site to begin that project. And I want to say that I personally was really happy that my former institution in Oklahoma also saw through an extension of that project. And so Will's been a friend of the museum, and I've enjoyed working with him over the years. And I'm sorry that we couldn't work out the scheduling difficulties, but it was great to have him interested in supporting this project.
Great, I'm glad that worked out time-wise to do that small slideshow of his work. Really appreciate that. All right, so Joe, with that, I'm gonna switch us over. I think I was concerned, I'll say that, about making sure that we had enough time for the number of people. We've got 47 participants on the call. So Joe, if you could pull up the purpose or the meeting manners just one more time, just to go over what, before I open up the meeting. Thank you for that. Yep. There we go. Thank you. So for folks that just joined us, you can also get the meeting streamed live on YouTube. Just as a reminder, if you stop the YouTube for any reason, there'll be a little bit of a lag time. But if you could keep your questions or comments respectful, that'd be fantastic. Your comments should be relevant to the purpose of the meeting, and I'm going to take us back to that in just a moment. Please raise your blue hand if you wish to speak. And then we're giving everyone 2 minutes. And so if you would honor that allotted time, deeply appreciate that. If through the discussion, there's things that have been expressed or, that have not been expressed, you're welcome to send me your comments via email to romero.rosemary@gmail.com. And I'm synthesizing all of the comments and packaging the information for Mark. So I want to make sure that we capture everything, as well as having the YouTube as a background information. So Joe, if you could go to the purpose one more time, please.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Just a reminder for folks who joined us a little bit late, and then we'll switch right over to the queue. I think folks have started to line up. Great. It's in the agenda. Oh, here we go. Thank you for that. I was a little slow on that. My apologies. So there's 2 major purposes this evening are seeking public perspectives on how the museum might better engage the community, especially where issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion are concerned. Second purpose is to seek input as to how the museum can better express its commitment through exhibitions and programs to explore ethnicity, gender, nationality, race, sexuality, and other forms of cultural difference. So if you could keep your comments really to those 2 purposes, it'll be very helpful. All right, with that, Joe, I'm going to open it up, and you and I will be playing a tag team on this. And for folks who joined us, there's 47 participants, and folks will be raising their hands, and then I'll set the timer on my end using my phone.
Okay. Rosemary, also, I'd just like to maybe extend the invite. We just might want to check if the one of the phone number, if they wish to speak also, it's a little tricky to raise your hand with the phone.
Oh, right.
But just as a courtesy.
Okay.
Okay, so may I go ahead and start?
Yes, please.
Okay. First up is Rick Martinez. And Mr. Martinez, you've been unmuted. You have the floor.
Thank you. I noticed one of your standing points was art is for everybody. So I wanted to make sure how we make sure our state representatives who we elected, our elected officials, represent us as far as art is projected in the future of this. I see that the mural at the Vadum building is being taken down, which I can see why, but it's like our state representatives don't represent us in making these decisions. It's all up to the bureaucrats who make these decisions. So I'm just kind of disappointed that our state representatives, I hope there's some of them are on listening to us now, that they listen to what the community is saying. This affects the whole state of New Mexico as far as being heard and what we think is right for the art, the New Mexico State artists to be putting on, and what they are doing, taking off and destroying at the same time, and how we honor murals or anything that is up. We need an honor system that the state recognizes for us to be somebody. Everything that the state has done is not done by representatives, done by bureaucrats, and we need to get our state representatives to more recognize us more. And that's what I would say. I thank you guys for putting on this, and it gives us a voice. Voices are important, but our state representatives have to listen to our voices at the same time, and not the bureaucrats. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it.
Next up, we have Connor Flynn. Connor, you've been muted and can speak. Have the floor.
Hi, thank you. I kind of want to echo what Rick was saying about the mural on the proposed Vladum building. There really wasn't any cost estimate analysis done on what it would take to conserve that mural. In any standard conservation approach, that's the first step, which was never done. And so for the museum to say that it wants to be inclusive and that diversity is important, it seems like a bit of it's disingenuous when you haven't even done the bare minimum to ensure that this mural stays up. It's an important piece of Santa Fe's history, and it's your duty to make sure that it remains. It's honestly quite an insult that more isn't being done. You know, I mean, there was an initial assessment done by Cynthia Lawrence, who I've spoken to, and her report was used out of context to say that the mural is past its natural lifespan, which is a false premise because she has said, no, that is not what her report has stated. And her report has been taken out of context. This is really just, it's a huge disappointment. More needs to be done about this. Otherwise, your diversity statement is completely disingenuous. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Connor. So Joe, as we're queuing up folks, I'm gonna thank you, that actually was less time. Thank you, Connor. So Joe, what's gonna happen is it looks like as people are speaking, their names are still staying up here even though they're muted. Is that correct?
Yeah, but we can let them know they can watch it on the link that we had put on there.
Okay.
If they go, let me just to remind them verbally, if they go to RR2 Consulting NM, RR2 Consulting NM, the channel there on YouTube, they will be able to then watch the rest of the meeting. So we'll go ahead and remove them now.
Okay.
To keep track.
And, you know, folks will, even
Give
if
me
they
one
stay
moment,
on
please.
here, I think it still is going to be fine. I just want to make sure that we've got room for everybody to come through.
Okay.
Okay. And just
There,
as a
Rosemary.
reminder, thank you.
Okay.
I'll tell you, technology as its best and worst, right?
Yes. And then, so next up, we have Cesar Morales.
Thank you.
And Cesar, you have the floor.
We can unmute him, I think. Okay. Nope.
Yeah, he is unmuted. I think it's on his side. He's permitted to talk.
Oh, there you go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
okay.
No,
Yeah, so my concern is more with just, I would like to see more outreach, and obviously not just from the museum, but just in general. I work a lot with indigenous groups. There's a group there in New Mexico called Project Venture, run by Neil Ferris. It's a very good initiative which takes indigenous kids out to nature and reconnects them with their culture. But you know, I've noticed that while art is free for everyone to experience, the creation of art is still very much for the privileged. You know, it can get quite expensive for art materials and to create workshops. And I just think that there's a lot of areas of New Mexico that can do with more of that interaction. You know, the disabled community is a community that I think is largely forgotten in the arts community. I used to do a photography workshop with blind people, and people would always ask me, you know, like, why would blind people want to do photography? Why do they want to do painting? It's a lot about not just the activity, but the social experience. You know, when you go to the museums, you guys have audio descriptions. We do a lot of that with the photography as well, where as we're doing the photography with them, we're describing what's in the photo and what's around them. So, I mean, I think, you know, there are some programs out there that address that. I just would like to see it on a wider scale.
thank you.
Okay. And next up, we have Carrie Wood. Carrie, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, thanks for letting me speak. Hello, Mark. We've met before. So I just want to say I'm glad you guys are having this meeting. However, I think it's kind of flawed from the beginning because this meeting, from what I saw, it was only on Instagram and Facebook. And so if you didn't happen to see it posted, I'm not sure how you would get the info. I didn't see it on the website. And Zoom itself is a very privileged, if you don't have a computer, you don't have access, if you're not on social media. I think if you're talking about equity, accessibility, inclusion, and diversity, I'm hoping that this isn't the only way that you're trying to get feedback from the community, because there's a lot of community that don't even know this is happening, let alone have access to it. And that being said, I just want to reiterate that a good way to show that you're serious about this and not gaslighting us is to actually put effort into saving the mural, the multicultural mural. Public art is accessible art. It's art for all. It doesn't cost anyone to see it. It's a good way to introduce people to art who don't have the means to actually go into the museum or might be intimidated by the museum setting. It's something that's always available in the public, and the multicultural mural specifically is a representation of the community. That mural was created by community members. It was created by Black and brown individuals, BIPOC people in our community, Indigenous people in our community. It is a very good representation. There's pretty much no public art in the downtown area minus that mural, and now the museum is claiming to be about diversity and equity, accessibility, and inclusion, but they're gonna at the same time remove this mural that represents all of those things that you claim to value or trying to value. And then one other point I want to make is that if the people in power do not represent these,
I'm gonna have you wrap up.
Okay, if the people in power don't represent the communities that you're trying to serve, then it's real change is never going to happen.
Thank you, really appreciate it. And Joe, before we go to the next person, I wanted to let folks know that aside from the advertisements that were done by the state through their media outlets, I also posted on Nextdoor Neighbor, which hits about 8,000 people, and I use it a lot just for my own neighborhood here at Casa Linda and others. But if you have other ideas, we're kind of in this weird virtual place. So Carrie, if you want to email me with other ideas, I would appreciate it, just to continue to get the word out, because I agree, there's always a better way to do it. But I know I personally just posted it because I thought my neighbors wanted to know about this meeting also. And so if you've got other ideas, please, my email was listed somewhere. Feel free to let me know if there's specific folks you'd like me to get in touch with. All right, Joe, the next person, please.
Next person is Christina Castro. And Christina, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Christina Castro. I would just also like to echo that I'm curious about the diversity in the New Mexico State Museums itself as far as the staff demographics. I just find it interesting that the director of the museum is only a recent relocated person to our community, when I see so many educated, profound artists and people in our own community that we could be employing. So I'm wondering about the racial demographic of the New Mexico State Museum. I also want to support the preservation or the reincarnation of the multicultural mural downtown. I am also a member of Three Sisters Collective. And if you have not heard of us, I don't know where you've been, but you should look us up on threesisterscollective.org. We, along with Alas de Agua Art Collective, have received a very substantial grant from Mural Arts Philadelphia. And currently we can't really access the downtown area or the rail yard to do public art because of the regulations in the city of Santa Fe. So we would really like to see if we could sit down with somebody to gain access to some of the downtown areas. And I know there's historical boards and whatnot, but if you really want to talk about inclusion, equity, diversity, accessibility, how do we really make art accessible to all the people? Murals is one way to do it. There's many cities that I've been to throughout the country. Tucson, for example, public art everywhere. Beautiful, beautiful public art. Why can't we have this art in the downtown area? Also, I noticed you posted a picture of people selling, Native people selling under the portal. And I still wonder who and why this practice is still being upheld in 2020. Well, obviously not now because of COVID, but why do Pueblo and Native people have to sell their art on the floor? Why is that still a thing? When is that going to change? When is our art as Pueblo people going to be taken seriously in the city and not just
Thank
be?
you, Christina.
Yep, you're welcome. Have a great day.
All right, Joe, we've got 45 people. And people being very respectful of time. Appreciate it.
Okay, up next is Alicia Guzman, I believe, Inez Guzman. And Alicia, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alicia Inez Guzman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, I just want to echo what my sisters and Three Sisters Collective have to say, and also what others have said. Specifically, I think diversity and inclusion starts within the institution itself. And if that institution doesn't reflect the public, we already have a problem. We're a minority majority state. And if our institutions don't reflect our demographic makeup, that's hugely problematic. In fact, that's, reinscribing a certain kind of violence. Not only is that patronizing, right? It's not actually a reflection of who we are in Santa Fe and in New Mexico. So I think that, as part of your process of self-reflection, that's something that you really need to look at, is who are the decision makers in the institution itself, and who are they representing? Of course, I want to advocate for the multicultural mural, because how better to reflect the community than to have a piece of public art that does do that. I find that, the DCA and New Mexico Museum of Art's response is quite feeble. I think anything is possible in terms of what we can put up on our walls. What we like to hear is not what's impossible, what's possible. And so I think that what the museum has to do right now is really push themselves to imagine a future in which people of color, queer people, Indigenous people, Black people, all of our communities can belong in such a way that we feel welcome. And right now, I don't think we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You were right on time.
Okay. Next up is Joseph Sinun Geduk. I hope I pronounced that right, Joseph, but you have the floor.
So Joseph, you're still muted, I think.
Yeah, I think he's going to need to unmute himself.
Okay,
there you go.
All right.
Hello, my name is Martha Sinungatuk. I'm Joseph Sinungatuk's wife. And my father was Dr. John J. Hoover. He taught at IAIA in your community, and that's pretty much the last time I ever saw Santa Fe, but it looks like not much has changed. And I wanted to speak to outreach to other parts of the country. I know that you're the center of Indigenous art and representing a lot of beautiful artists that do great work. But at the same time, I'm from Alaska. I'm calling you from Anchorage, Alaska. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about expanding your programming to further out, like some of the shows that you have. Can you put those online so that we can see them, and some of the workshops? And we do have programs like that in Anchorage from the Anchorage Museum and from the colleges, but I would sure like to see more coming from the Southwest and be able to have a cultural exchange with you on that. Thank you.
Martha, thank you very much. Before you get off, I think Joe is going to put you over to YouTube, but I want to say thank you for that. I think that idea of capturing how to expand programming, and as I said earlier, we're in this virtual world, but I think those experiences that you noted from Alaska would be really helpful. And if you could email me. I'll look if that's possible. I would appreciate it. Or I can just look on, I can Google some of the ideas just to make sure I capture what you're talking about with some of these other ideas of accessibility.
I will. And I actually was at the museum for the Indian Museum on the Mall, and they talked about the fourth museum. So I think, something like that would really be helpful. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. So Joe, if you could let's just go back to the purpose again one more time, just to remind folks is, we're looking for other ideas. I know we're talking a lot about the mural, but I'm hoping that folks will also get creative with some of these other ideas of how the museum can do a better job in a variety of areas. So I appreciate the comments that we're getting so far, but also we need to have folks give us some direct ideas as well as the preservation and accessibility. So Joe, thanks for putting that up there. And then I think you have queued up the next person, please.
So right now we don't have any hands up, but we have a phone number. Is it okay if we maybe unmute them and ask if they wish to speak?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay. The last four in the phone number is 4948. And the person on the phone for 4948, you've been unmuted. If you wish to speak, you have the floor. Last four is 4948. You've been unmuted to speak.
Okay.
I think we'll just go ahead and maybe mute them.
Yep.
And then we'll move on to our next participant.
Okay, thank you for that. And if they come
Okay.
back and want to speak, that's terrific. All right,
Okay,
thanks.
great. Okay, so our next speaker is Autumn Gomez. And Autumn, you have the floor.
Hello, Marawa, Hioho. Good evening, everyone. My name is Autumn Gomez. I'm a lifelong resident of Santa Fe, New Mexico. I am also an artist who participates in public art. I also would like to advocate for the multicultural mural. As you said, that may not be the whole point of this meeting, but I think that you're going to hear a lot about it and start to understand how important it is to the people of this town to erase this important piece of Chicano art is it's pretty devastating, honestly. And I'm a younger person and I feel incredibly attached to that older style of art. And once it's gone, that's a part of our history too. I don't understand why some people's art doesn't get to be in a museum. I'm a person whose art is in a museum, and that's very privileged. And I just wonder what it's gonna take for that mural to be preserved, as well as some of the other older murals around town. Now, I know that doesn't really pertain to the museum ideas and all that exactly, but it is important. It is our history, and losing that part of history becomes a victim to gentrification. And when that happens, that's like an erasure of all of our Norte culture. And that's really important to me. So thank you all, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Okay. And I don't see any other raised hands at this time, Rosemary.
Yeah, I don't either, but I'd like to pose a question for folks that are still watching is, I think the question about public art and then even private art, having been born and raised here and still live in the same neighborhood I was born in, recalling some of the previous murals, which is public art, but oftentimes it's put on private property. So I'm wondering if folks have ideas about accessibility or how to increase the type of murals that have been suggested, if that's one of them. Are there other ideas that folks have about where that could go? I heard the rail yard, and I think the issue is that folks are wanting to create more accessibility to murals, but I'm wondering if folks have specific ideas beyond private or the public art. And in a few minutes, Joe, if we don't get other folks, I think it's I think those that did attend, had specific issues that I've captured some. And maybe what we do is show the videos again, if for those that didn't get them, and maybe start backwards. Would that work? Is a couple of those, and then call it a night. And we're gonna leave it open for a while. The YouTube is gonna run. But how about if we do, I think Gen Packs would be a great one to just do one more time. And I don't think we need to do the other two, but we're gonna leave the mics open for folks. Mark, are you okay with just doing the video to see if it primes the pump for anybody?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Joe, if you could queue up, and then if anybody comes on, we'll go right to them.
Okay.
I'd say I'm an artist of blended culture and hybrid traits. Specifically, I'm Korean Caucasian, as well as I would say masculine and feminine, and I straddle the imaginary line between craft and art. I'm also a loud introvert, and I have rural work roots as well as urban qualities. And I've been told many times that I'm ambiguous or hard to place or qualify. This seems to create an interesting space for me in which I'm simultaneously kind of blend in and stick out at the same time. It also means I'm uncomfortable most of the time. I actually have become really comfortable being uncomfortable and sitting in discomfort. Although, to be honest, this hasn't always been the case. It's taken many years and decades really to become more comfortable being seen and being frank about these things. In the long run, I found it to be much more uncomfortable, I should say, and actually can be sometimes quite painful to hide and allow people to project like a false mirroring onto me. And the way this informs my work is that my work is a space of integration. I'm always working to integrate and to kind of mend and seam together disparities that I can't seem to unsee. And it's probably a reaction from being in discomfort. I try to create space for and, not either or. My work is a space where I have worked the most to allow myself to be seen because I can't erase myself from the work. So I see and I'm exploring kind of a broad spectrum with many in-between colors. And this is the way I'm, being an in-between person really informs my work. It's a continual investigation of the in-between and kind of an integration. And what I really truly hope for is alchemy, creating something new and incentive, from kind of a mushy and exploratory space. This is what I mean by not being able to erase myself from the work. The Alcoves exhibition included works that are reflections of me, meaning my tenuous bicultural background, my kind of fluttering between masculine and feminine, and even in my sort of occupation of urban aesthetics and hard edges, but also rural or even kind of pastoral landscape references in my work. And I used to fantasize about being able to disappear and letting the work exist in a vacuum. And I found that to be a silly fantasy. I think it's from knowing just how incredibly vulnerable the work makes me. It's because it's so exposing. It's literally transparent, and I would say is a window into my soul exploration. And this used to really alarm me, even though I couldn't stop the compulsion to make it. It's just a space of real vulnerability. But now I'm embracing that vulnerability, and it really continues to transform and center me in kind of a grounding space that I think of as like a powerful softness. And the truth is we're kind of all vulnerable, and the masking that we do to reduce that vulnerability and like hiding in a hierarchy is really a false sense of safety. I'm finding that vulnerability is really quite powerful. And it can be just incredible and even luminous. And the site-specific installation that was included in Alcoves, that was a direct expression of that vulnerability and the power that's inherent in softness, materially and otherwise, and what can transpire if we allow ourselves to sing what I call our true color song. That piece really turned out to be an expression of identity in so many ways. I ran into some real technical issues during the installation, and it became like this embrace of ambiguity and working a way out of problem solving through integrating and seeing and trusting both of myself, but also of others on staff and volunteers. And I was so grateful the museum gave me that opportunity to install it and really took a chance on what could have been a potential failure. I'm being more openly vocal with long-held private conversations around inequity. And I've actually engaged with DI issues for quite some time in my personal life and also my work life. In my day job, I'm a librarian. And also just through my own self-education into some of the kind of uglier aspects of American history and the way it shapes us today. You know, I mean, I really try and keep up on podcasts and reading. There's just so much incredible stuff being written right now in the turmoil we're in, and it's kind of an exciting time, actually. I find conversations like this one to be really important, and I'm trying to be more generous in disclosing my own experiences and the way it's informed my work and my life as a person of color, as a woman, as someone who's kind of hybrid and ambiguous, and actually just being more persistent in asking to be held in a space that doesn't require my identities to be kind of like cut off or edited. I'm also really trying to make space for others to tell their stories, because this is where I feel like telling each other's our collective stories can help us stop causing each other pain. And I've had this idea percolating for a while that involves storytelling and narrative interviews with what I think of as fellow truth seekers, people that are trying to restore harmony in the way they engage with their chosen art or craft. And I'm thinking this would probably most likely be in the form of a blog. And saying this out loud will help me to motivate actually to do it and get it started. And then more concretely, some things have folded together this year that have allowed me to begin doing something I've long wanted to do, which is donate a portion of all my art sales and right now that's going to equity organizations. So basically what I mean by that specifically is this is the year my student debt went away. And it's huge. I don't know adult life without it. And so I've been really waiting to get out from under that burden and do some investing both in myself and the larger social fabric. And that's kind of finally arrived. So, and I am also exploring ways to create limited edition multiples, the portion of the proceeds going to equity organizations and movements. So that's a work in progress, but something I'm working on with a gallery that represents me. And hopefully more ideas will come.
Thank you for putting that back up, Joe. I think Jen really speaks so eloquently to a lot of the issues, and forgetting the I think the alchemy piece that she talks about, and the work that she's personally doing, and to share in such a public way, I think is really powerful. And I appreciate the work that you did in drawing that out from her, and she's just I think a good example. Folks, we are I think we're going to wrap up here.
Rosemary, we do have one person to raise a hand. They wish to speak. And okay, and up next is Gabriel Gonzalez.
Yes.
And Gabriel, you have the floor.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. My name is Gabriel Gonzalez. I'm calling from Los Angeles, representing the family of Gilberto Guzman, who is the muralist that designed the multicultural mural. He's recently been recognized as a Santa Fe Living Treasure, and And so I just want to take this opportunity to advocate for the preservation of the mural and ask that the museum take this opportunity to connect with the community, listen to the community, and build with the community through preservation of this mural. My uncle's still living in Santa Fe. He knows what's happening with the planning of removal of this mural, and it's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece that needs to be preserved, and it would be an honor and a privilege for the museum to do that for the community of Santa Fe. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Gabriel. All right. Anyone
Okay.
else? Here's the last call.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We
I
have,
missed you last call. It's like one more for the road, right?
yes,
All right.
Elizabeth West.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate any of these dialogues. I think it's wonderful. I too, Mark, am a newcomer and an Anglo, but luckily I married somebody who grew up here, and he was born here, and our children were born here, and our grandchildren were born here, so that makes me okay by connection. But joking aside, I've been here since 1966, and I've just grown to love the history. So even though I'm from originally Boston, and I came here incidentally, sort of by mistake, and then decided to stay, I have grown to love it. So I want to remind all the folks who've got long, long history, which I respect, whether indigenous or Spanish or Hispanic, and those of us who come in from the outside have a different point of view, perhaps, but it's equally valuable. However, I have been, I'm called a white woman. I'm kind of pale green sometimes, but I do have a privilege just because of my skin, and it's ridiculous. I'm aware of that. I'm also a grandmother, so I have to be very careful and smart. And when my first job here was being as a waitress at La Fonda, so before it was sold from the Harvey Foundation, I was actually a Harvey girl. I love all this stuff. And I love the mural. I am one of those people who doesn't have a real connection as far as my heritage goes to the mural. But I think there's something very precious about not only the mural, of course, I think there is something precious about it, and it's important, and it's fun to see it, even though it's kind of being kept in prison right now. But I think it's precious to have a museum full of art that feels a little bit separate. But therefore, I want to underline how exciting it is, your alcove projects. I've always loved them, and I would love to see that expanded and into the new museum. And I'm looking forward to having the contemporary art be part of the art scene here. But I too wish there were a creative and really far out, interesting, ultrasonic way to keep the mural somehow. Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. Joe, I think there was somebody else who had a hand up. Yes.
Okay, next up is Ogowe and Samuel Villarreal Katnak. You have the floor, folks.
Umbiagandi, Sengihu, no Tochome, Ogowe, Hera, no Americana Home, Samuel Villarreal Katnak, Osawege, Owinge, Iweri Omu. Good evening, my name is Samuel. I'm from the Pueblo of Powaki. I just wanted to say, to talk about the mural and how keeping it up would be a really great opportunity for addressing a lot of the things that this event is about, for ways to create programming and awareness and education surrounding ethnicity, gender, nationality, etc. And I'm in support of keeping up the mural. Thank you for your time. Good dawa.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in the queue, Joe?
Don't see anybody at this time. Oh, wait, here we go. Lynette. Lynette, you have the floor. Lynette, a couple
Yes, can you hear
Yes.
me?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Lynette, let's
All
start
right.
with-
Yeah.
There we go.
Yat Dagote Hiyaho. My name is Lynette Houses. I'm Chiricahua Apache. My name is Lynette Houses. I'm Chiricahua Apache of San Carlos, Arizona. I'm also Taos Pueblo and Dene. I'm a local artist as well as a muralist, and I'm here to also advocate for the preservation of this multicultural mural. And I think it would be really great to see the Albuquerque Museum take the responsibility in preserving this historic art piece of history. And what a blessing to have the muralist, the original muralist, still alive. And I just wanted to thank him and his family for calling in today, and encourage the Albuquerque Museum to work actively with these groups that are already working to preserve it, and to seek support from your local cohorts and also museums within the area to also join in on this movement and preservation of this mural. So thank you everyone for calling in, advocating for the preservation of this mural and your work.
Thank you, Lynette. All right. Anyone else in the queue, Joe?
Not at this time.
All right. Mark, I'm going to turn to you for wrapping this up. And just to make sure folks who are still watching, this is the New Mexico Museum of Art based here in Santa Fe. And certainly a lot of the work that that the Department of Cultural Affairs represents is statewide, right? But just to make sure that folks didn't think they were at the wrong meeting. So Mark, with that, I'm going to turn to you for pulling this together and some of the next steps.
Well, thank you, Rosemary. And thank you for everyone who commented tonight. We appreciate you attending this town hall and appreciate your opinions. As far as next steps, Rosemary will be compiling all of these comments. We will go back to our DEAI committee within the museum and consider how we can apply some of the suggestions. And then to the extent possible, we will then communicate back to the public via some sort of public platform. As soon as we kind of figure out what the statement is, that will probably decide the forum. So I also want to thank Jen Pack and Harmony Hammond, as well as Will Wilson, for their willingness and generosity of their time. And finally, thank you to Rosemary and Joe. Job well done, and greatly appreciate your help in this.
Great, thank you. So for folks that are just tuning in, the YouTube channel will be turned off at some point soon. But that's been another way to reach folks, especially a younger generation that does watch YouTube has been really helpful. Here's hoping that there's a shift with COVID that will allow us to meet in person at some point in the very near future. And until then, what we've got is this virtual way of meeting, which isn't the ideal. It's always best to look people in the eye and get a better understanding of who they are and have that kind of conversation. But until then, this is as good as it gets, and appreciate that, this is the first step, and hopefully there may be more. I often think that sometimes smaller groups are another way to get information out. And to people who showed up, this was one of the larger public forums that I've had in the recent times, I guess, because I do meetings that are about land use or water, which sometimes draws a lot of people out and sometimes no one cares. But this one certainly had a very active number of people participating. And for that, we say thank you for taking your time, giving your energy. And with that, we're going to end the meeting and look forward to getting back to you again sometime soon. And until then, stay well, stay safe, and appreciate all of you. All right.